During the Great Depression, American families had an incredible secret growing in their backyards. 25 remarkable vegetables that most people today have completely forgotten. These tough plants helped entire families survive the hardest economic disaster in modern American history. Let's uncover these forgotten vegetables that our grandparents relied on when times were toughest. The Jerusalem artichoke, nature's underground insurance policy. When the Depression hit America, one vegetable stood out as nature's perfect survival food: the Jerusalem artichoke. Despite its name, it's not from Jerusalem and not related to artichokes. This Native American plant was taught to European settlers by Native Americans who had grown them for centuries. What made Jerusalem artichokes so valuable during hard times? Unlike other vegetables that needed replanting every year, these were truly perennial, coming back stronger year after year with zero work. Once planted, they'd return on their own, creating a reliable food source that actually grew bigger each season. They had another amazing feature: you could harvest them all winter long, even from frozen ground. Families would simply dig up what they needed and leave the rest for later. Their natural sweetness came from inulin rather than starch, making them a welcome treat when other foods were scarce. These plants were also incredibly productive, with a single planting yielding up to 15 pounds of tubers per square yard. During the Depression, when every bit of food mattered, this remarkable yield made Jerusalem artichokes worth their weight in gold. The humble Rutabaga, Depression's hidden gem. Back in the 1930s, the Rutabaga earned its nickname as the poor man's potato. But this vegetable was actually worth its weight in gold. Unlike regular potatoes, rutabagas packed more vitamin C than oranges, making them essential when fresh fruit was impossible to afford. What made rutabagas truly remarkable during the Depression was their incredible storage life. These hardy vegetables stayed fresh for 4 to 6 months in a simple root cellar, providing vital nutrition through the entire winter. Families would plant them in late summer and harvest enough to last until spring. Most impressively, rutabagas thrived in poor soil conditions. When other vegetables struggled to grow, rutabagas produced bumper crops even in the worst conditions. This resilience made them perfectly suited for Depression-era gardens, when fertilizer and good soil were luxury items few could afford. The rutabaga's versatility in the kitchen made it even more valuable. Families would roast them like potatoes, mash them with a little butter, or add them to stews and soups to add richness and nutrition. Every part of this vegetable could be used, with even the green tops serving as nutritious cooking greens. The scarlet runner bean, beauty and bounty combined. During the Depression, garden space was precious, and the scarlet runner bean offered an ingenious solution by growing upward instead of outward. These vigorous climbing beans could reach impressive heights of 10 to 12 feet, turning a tiny corner of the garden into a food-producing tower. Unlike modern green beans, scarlet runners served triple duty in Depression gardens. Their stunning red flowers attracted pollinators to the entire garden. Their young pods provided fresh snap beans all summer, and their mature beans could be dried for protein-rich winter meals. What made scarlet runners especially valuable during hard times was their incredible productivity. A single plant could produce beans continuously from midsummer until frost, with families harvesting fresh beans daily. The more they picked, the more the plants produced. Depression-era gardeners would create simple trellises from whatever materials they had on hand: branches, twine, or even old ladder rungs. This resourcefulness meant that even families with tiny backyard gardens could grow enough beans to help them through winter. The plants showed remarkable resilience to heat and drought, continuing to flower and produce beans even when summer temperatures soared and rain was scarce. This reliability made scarlet runners a Depression-era insurance policy against hunger. Salsify, the oyster plant that grew on land. While many Depression vegetables were valued purely for their filling nature, Salsify brought something special to the table: a unique flavor that reminded people of fresh oysters. This remarkable root vegetable provided a touch of luxury to even the humblest dinner table during the hardest times. Salsify became a family favorite because it was like having a root cellar right in your garden. You could leave it in the ground all winter in most regions, digging it up whenever you needed food. When you weren't ready to harvest, it would wait patiently underground, staying fresh for months. Clever Depression-era gardeners discovered that salsify was like getting two vegetables in one. They could eat both the long, parsnip-like roots and the nutritious greens, making every plant twice as valuable during times when maximizing garden output was essential for survival. What made salsify particularly suited to depression gardens was its ability to grow in poor soil. Unlike fussier vegetables, salsify would produce good yields even in less than ideal conditions, making it perfect for families who couldn't afford soil amendments or fertilizers. By the 1950s, as prosperity returned, salsify largely disappeared from American gardens. Today, this versatile vegetable is mainly found in specialty markets and the gardens of dedicated heritage vegetable enthusiasts who appreciate its unique flavor and remarkable hardiness. Mangel wurzels, the giants that fed families and livestock. Imagine a beet that grew as big as a bowling ball. That's the Mangel wurzel. These giants could reach up to 20 pounds each, and during the Depression, they were worth their weight in gold. Although most people today have never heard of them, they were a common sight in 1930s gardens. Mangel wurzels earned their place in Depression gardens because of their dual-purpose nature. Families would eat them like regular beets, cooking them to bring out their natural sweetness. Any extras would feed livestock through the winter, helping to keep precious milk cows and chickens producing when feed was scarce. The sheer size of these massive roots made them incredibly efficient garden plants. A single row of Mangel wurzels could produce hundreds of pounds of food, making them among the highest-yielding vegetables of the Depression era. Families could store them for months in simple root cellars, providing food security when it was needed most. Their high sugar content made Mangel wurzels surprisingly palatable when properly prepared. Depression-era cookbooks featured recipes for Mangel wurzel pickles, Mangel wurzel apple pie, where the sweet root stood in for scarce apples, and even Mangel wurzel coffee substitute, when real coffee was too expensive. If you're enjoying this journey through Depression-era gardening wisdom, consider supporting us on Patreon. Your membership helps us research and share more forgotten survival skills from our grandparents' generation. You'll also get exclusive content, including our heirloom seed guides and monthly Q&A sessions. The link is in the description below. Now let's continue discovering these remarkable forgotten vegetables. Parsnips, nature's winter sugar factory. After the first frost hit the garden, something magical happened to parsnips. They transformed from ordinary root vegetables into nature's candy. Unlike other vegetables that suffered in cold weather, parsnips actually improved, converting their starches into natural sugars that made them surprisingly sweet. During the Depression, this made parsnips incredibly valuable because actual sugar was often too expensive for many families to buy. A single row of parsnips could provide both food and sweetness all winter long. These vegetables were also packed with calories, much more than carrots or potatoes, making them perfect for hard-working families who needed energy-rich food. Depression-era gardeners discovered they could leave parsnips right in the ground through winter, using the earth as a natural storage cellar. Whenever they needed food, they simply dug up a few roots, even if the ground was partially frozen. The ones left in the ground would stay fresh until spring, providing reliable food when other vegetables were long gone. Some families would mark their parsnip rows with tall stakes so they could find them under the snow, ensuring access to fresh food even in the middle of winter. This simple technique turned the cold winter ground from an enemy into an ally, preserving food perfectly without any special equipment. The versatility of parsnips made them even more valuable. They could be roasted, mashed, added to soups, or even made into sweet parsnip cake when other dessert ingredients were unavailable. Their natural sweetness meant they could be used to add flavor to otherwise plain meals, bringing a bit of joy to the table during difficult times. Hamburg, rooted parsley, the two-in-one wonder. When times were tough during the Depression, families needed plants that could do more than one job, and Hamburg, rooted parsley, was exactly that kind of vegetable. Unlike the parsley we know today that just gives us leaves, this forgotten variety developed large, sturdy roots underground that looked similar to small parsnips. These roots weren't just for show. They stored perfectly through winter in simple root cellars, providing food when fresh vegetables were hard to find. Above ground, the leaves were exactly like regular parsley, packed with more vitamin C than oranges and adding fresh flavor to meals year-round. Depression-era families would harvest the leaves all summer long, using them fresh or drying them for winter use. Then when fall came, they'd dig up the thick white roots and store them alongside their other root vegetables. These roots had a rich, earthy flavor that added depth to soups and stews while still providing the same vitamins and minerals that made parsley so valuable. Smart gardeners would plant several rows, harvesting roots from some while letting others continue producing leaves throughout the growing season. This strategy maximized the food value from limited garden space, a critical consideration when gardens were survival tools rather than hobbies. Hamburg-rooted parsley required very little care, thriving in most soil conditions and showing good resistance to both drought and cold. This resilience made it perfect for Depression-era gardens when families couldn't afford to gamble on finicky vegetables that might fail to produce. Collard greens, the survivors. In the depths of the Depression, families needed vegetables that wouldn't quit, and collard greens proved to be exactly that. These remarkable greens had an amazing ability that set them apart. They kept growing when other garden vegetables gave up. During summer heat waves that would wilt lettuce and spinach, collards stood tall and strong, their thick leaves continuing to provide fresh food for the table. Then, when winter frost killed off most other greens, collards just got sweeter, often surviving temperatures as low as 10 degrees Fahrenheit. This meant families could harvest fresh vegetables nearly year-round from the same plants. Depression-era gardeners would start picking the lower leaves in early summer, and the plants would keep producing new leaves from the top, like a never-ending food factory. When they had more leaves than they could eat fresh, preserving them was simple. They could be canned, dried, or even salted down in barrels. These preserved greens became a crucial source of vitamins during winter months when fresh vegetables were scarce. Most importantly, collards packed more nutrition than almost any other green vegetable, providing calcium for strong bones and enough vitamin C to keep families healthy through the lean times. For children growing up during the Depression, these nutrients were essential for proper development when other nutritious foods were often out of reach. The incredible resilience of collards made them perfectly suited for the challenges of Depression-era gardening. They required minimal care, resisted most pests and diseases, and produced abundantly even in poor soil, making them a reliable food source when reliability meant survival. Ground cherries, nature's candy, wrapped in paper. While most garden vegetables were purely practical, ground cherries brought something special to Depression-era gardens, a touch of sweetness wrapped in nature's own paper packaging. These unusual fruits, related to tomatoes, grew inside papery husks that looked like tiny Chinese lanterns. The husks served as perfect natural wrappers, protecting the sweet golden fruits inside and allowing them to store for months without any special treatment. Depression-era children would delight in finding these wrapped candies in the garden, peeling back the paper-like husks to reveal the marble-sized fruits that tasted like a mix of pineapple and vanilla. What made ground cherries especially valuable was their self-seeding nature. Once you had them in your garden, they would come back year after year on their own, requiring no additional work or expense. Families could store ground cherries right in their husks in a cool, dry place, and they would keep fresh for 3 to 4 months, providing rare sweet treats long after other fruits were gone. The plants produced continuously from midsummer until frost, ensuring a steady supply of these naturally wrapped treasures. During the Depression, when store-bought sweets were often unaffordable luxuries, ground cherries offered a free alternative that brought a small measure of joy during difficult times. Besides eating them fresh, families used ground cherries to make preserves, pies, and jams that would last through winter. Their unique flavor made these preserves especially prized, often saved for special occasions like Sunday dinners or holiday celebrations, when a taste of sweetness meant even more. Field corn, the foundation of survival. When people think of corn today, they picture sweet corn eaten fresh off the cob. But during the Depression, families relied on something far more valuable: field corn. This wasn't the sweet corn we know today. It was a hardy, high-calorie crop that could feed a family for months. Field corn had an incredible advantage over other vegetables because it served multiple purposes. Families would let it mature fully on the stalk until the kernels were hard and dry. Once harvested, these dried kernels could be ground into cornmeal, providing the foundation for countless meals from cornbread and porridge to corn cakes and mush. A single acre of field corn could produce enough cornmeal to feed a family for an entire year. The dried corn stored perfectly in a simple barn or shed, requiring no special equipment or preparation. During the hardest times of the Depression, this cornmeal became the backbone of family nutrition, providing essential calories when other foods were scarce. Beyond grinding it for meal, families would also use field corn to make hominy, a traditional food made by soaking corn kernels in lye water to remove the hulls. This process not only preserved the corn but actually increased its nutritional value, making the niacin in the corn more available to the body, a crucial benefit when vitamin deficiencies were common. Some Depression-era families also saved field corn for seed, ensuring they would have something to plant the following spring without having to purchase seed. This self-sufficiency was essential during times when cash was extremely scarce and food security depended on what a family could grow for themselves. Winter cabbage, the Danish ballhead secret. During the Depression, one variety of cabbage stood head and shoulders above the rest, the Danish ballhead. This wasn't your ordinary cabbage. It was specially bred for long-term storage, and it became a lifesaver for families trying to make it through winter. What made Danish ballhead so special was its incredibly dense head, packed so tight that a single cabbage felt as heavy as a bowling ball. This density wasn't just for show. It allowed these cabbages to stay fresh for an amazing 6 to 8 months in a root cellar. No special treatment needed. Even when frost hit the garden, these tough plants stood their ground, actually getting sweeter as temperatures dropped. Families discovered they could harvest heads all the way until the ground froze solid. The vitamin C content was so high that just one serving provided as much as a glass of orange juice, crucial during winter months when fresh fruit wasn't available. Smart gardeners would plant their winter cabbage in midsummer, timing it so the heads would mature just as the cold weather arrived. During the Depression, these storage cabbages became the foundation of countless meals. Families would use them for everything from simple coleslaw to cabbage rolls, sauerkraut, and hearty cabbage soups. The outer leaves, even if slightly damaged, weren't wasted. They'd be fed to chickens or rabbits, helping to maintain valuable protein sources through winter. A good crop of Danish ballhead meant a family would have fresh vegetables long after the garden was buried in snow, a form of food security that required no electricity, no canning equipment, and very little effort beyond planting, harvesting, and proper storage. Turnips, the 6-week savior. During the Depression, time was just as precious as money, and that's where turnips proved their worth. In just 6 weeks, faster than almost any other vegetable, a family could go from planting seeds to harvesting full-grown turnips. This quick growth meant that even if other crops failed, there was still time to plant turnips and have food for winter. But speed wasn't their only strength. These hardy vegetables laughed at drought, growing strong even when rain was scarce and other plants were wilting in the garden. Depression-era families learned to make the most of every turnip plant. The roots could be eaten fresh, mashed like potatoes, or stored in root cellars for months. Meanwhile, the greens were a meal in themselves, packed with nutrients and perfect for cooking or adding to soups. Some families would plant turnips several times during the growing season, some for immediate eating, others for storage, and still more just for the constant supply of fresh greens they provided. Even when the summer garden was done, stored turnips kept providing food through the cold months. The humble turnip also played another vital role during the Depression, helping to stretch other foods. A few turnips added to a stew could make a small amount of meat feed many more mouths. Their mild flavor took on the taste of whatever they were cooked with, making them perfect for bulking up soups, stews, and casseroles when other ingredients were scarce. For children of the Depression era, turnips often became a symbol of resilience, a vegetable that could be counted on even when other foods disappeared. Many families would set aside their best turnips for seed, ensuring they would have this reliable crop available year after year, without additional expense. Navy beans, the protein powerhouse. While most vegetables provided vitamins and minerals, Depression-era families needed something that could replace expensive meat, and that's where navy beans became worth their weight in gold. These small white beans were protein powerhouses, providing nearly as much protein as a serving of meat at a fraction of the cost. But their value went far beyond just nutrition. Navy beans had a remarkable ability to dry right on the vine, making them practically foolproof to store. Families would plant them in spring, tend them through summer, and by fall they'd have beans that could last for years without any special storage equipment needed. During the growing season, these beans did something extraordinary. They actually improved the soil they grew in by fixing nitrogen from the air. This meant that not only did they feed families today, but they made the garden more productive for next year's crops. Depression-era gardeners would often plant navy beans alongside their corn, letting the beans climb the corn stalks while enriching the soil for both plants. A single row of navy beans could produce enough dried beans to provide protein for a family all winter long. People would store them in simple glass jars or cloth sacks, knowing they had a reliable source of protein ready whenever they needed it. The dried beans were incredibly versatile in the kitchen, forming the basis for nutritious soups, bean cakes, baked beans, and numerous other dishes. In many Depression-era households, a pot of navy bean soup became a Monday tradition, often made with a ham bone saved from Sunday's dinner. This simple meal could feed a family for days, providing complete protein when combined with even a small amount of cornbread or other grain. Swiss chard, the cut-and-come-again champion. While collards were the winter champions, Swiss chard was the vegetable that kept on giving throughout the growing season. Depression-era families discovered that Swiss chard had an almost magical ability. The more you harvested it, the more it grew. This cut-and-come-again nature meant that just a few plants could feed a family for months. Unlike regular greens that needed replanting every few weeks, Swiss chard would keep producing from the same stalks all season long. The large, crinkled leaves could be harvested when young and tender for fresh eating, or left to grow larger for cooking. Even in the hottest part of summer, when lettuce would bolt and turn bitter, Swiss chard remained sweet and productive. What made it especially valuable during the Depression was its incredible vitamin content, particularly vitamins A and C, which were otherwise hard to come by. Families would plant their Swiss chard near the kitchen door for easy harvesting, picking a few leaves every day for months on end. A single row of plants could provide fresh greens from late spring until the hard frosts of fall. Depression-era cooks discovered countless ways to use Swiss chard in the kitchen. The colorful stems could be chopped and cooked like celery, while the leaves were used in place of spinach in almost any recipe. Nothing went to waste. Even older, tougher leaves were still nutritious additions to soups and stews. The remarkable resilience of Swiss chard made it perfectly suited for difficult times. It could survive short droughts, tolerate poor soil, and recover quickly from pests or damage. For families trying to maximize food production from limited garden space, This made Swiss chard one of the most efficient vegetables they could grow. American groundnut, the native superfood. Long before the Depression, Native Americans knew about a remarkable vine that produced protein-packed tubers, the American groundnut. This native plant had an extraordinary secret. Its underground tubers contained 3 times the protein of potatoes, making it one of the most nutritious root crops ever grown in American gardens. During the Depression, this high protein content made ground nuts incredibly valuable as a meat substitute. The vines would climb up corn stalks or garden fences, producing clusters of marble-sized tubers that could be harvested without killing the plant. These tubers could stay fresh right in the ground through winter, creating a natural storage system that required no special preparation. Each plant would spread underground, creating new tubers that could be harvested year after year. Depression-era families discovered what Native Americans had known for centuries, that a patch of groundnuts provided reliable, high-protein food with almost no effort. The plants were virtually indestructible, surviving drought, poor soil, and harsh winters while continuing to produce their nutritious tubers. What made groundnuts even more valuable was their perennial nature. Unlike potatoes that needed replanting every year, groundnuts would return on their own, growing stronger and more productive with each passing season. This self-perpetuating food source became especially important during the Depression when seed money was scarce. The tubers could be prepared just like potatoes, boiled, mashed, or added to stews, but they provided far more nutrition. Their slightly nutty flavor was appealing even to children, making them valuable additions to family meals when meat was unaffordable or unavailable. Winter radishes, the giants that protected gardens. While the small red radishes we know today might look cute in our salads, Depression-era families grew something much more impressive: winter radishes. These weren't your ordinary radishes. They grew as big as turnips and packed much more food value. Families would plant them in late summer, and by fall, they'd have massive roots that could feed a family for days. During the Depression, every part of these giants was put to use. The roots were sliced for meals or shredded for storage, while the greens were cooked up just like spinach, providing vital nutrients when fresh vegetables were scarce. But winter radishes had another trick that made them extra valuable. They naturally kept pests away from other vegetables. Gardeners would plant them around their other crops, creating a natural barrier that protected the entire garden. This dual-purpose role made winter radishes especially valuable when chemical pesticides were either unavailable or unaffordable. The best part, these hardy vegetables could be stored right through winter in a simple root cellar, staying crisp and fresh for months. When money was tight, having vegetables that could both protect your garden and feed your family made winter radishes worth their weight in gold. Unlike their smaller cousins, winter radishes weren't spicy hot, but instead had a mild, slightly sweet flavor that became even better after the first frost. Varieties like Black Spanish and China Rose were particular favorites, often growing to 8 inches long and 3 inches in diameter, large enough that a single radish could provide several meals. Good King Henry, the first fresh food of spring. When most garden vegetables were still months away from producing, Good King Henry earned its royal name by providing some of the first fresh food of spring. This remarkable perennial green was like having multiple vegetables in one plant. As soon as the snow melted, tender shoots would emerge that could be harvested and cooked like asparagus. As the plant grew taller, its arrow-shaped leaves provided fresh greens that could be eaten raw or cooked like spinach. The plant's self-seeding nature meant it spread itself naturally, creating new plants without any effort from the gardener. Depression-era families valued Good King Henry because it was among the first fresh vegetables available after winter, appearing weeks before other garden plants were ready to harvest. Once established, these plants would return year after year, growing stronger and producing more food each season. They required almost no care, thriving in spots where other vegetables wouldn't grow. This resilience made them perfect for tough Depression-era gardens, when fertilizers and amendments were often unavailable. Good King Henry also played an important medicinal role during the Depression. The young leaves were rich in iron and vitamin C, helping to prevent spring anemia, a common condition after months of limited fresh vegetables. Some families would make a spring tonic from the first shoots, believing it helped clear the blood of winter sluggishness. For many Depression-era families, the appearance of good King Henry was a cause for celebration, signaling that the lean winter months were finally ending. The first harvest would often be used in a special meal that marked the beginning of the new growing season and renewed hope after the hardships of winter. Lamb's quarters, the iron-rich volunteer. Nature had its own way of helping during the Depression through a remarkable plant called lamb's quarters. This fast-growing green packed more iron than spinach and grew so easily that many called it nature's gift to gardeners. While some considered it a weed, Depression-era families knew its true value. It provided more nutrition than many cultivated greens while requiring absolutely no care. The plants would appear on their own in spring, growing rapidly to produce tender leaves that could be eaten raw in salads or cooked like spinach. What made lamb's quarters truly remarkable was its drought tolerance. It stayed green and productive even during the driest summers when other greens had long since withered. The plants would self-seed readily, ensuring a continuous supply year after year. Families would let some plants go to seed while harvesting others, creating a perpetual food source that cost nothing to maintain. The young shoots could be harvested like asparagus, while the mature leaves provided iron-rich nutrition throughout the growing season. During the Depression, this free food source became especially valuable for families with limited gardening space or resources. Even those without formal gardens could often find lamb's quarters growing in vacant lots or along fences, providing nutritious greens for the taking. Some forward-thinking families would actually encourage lamb's quarters to grow in certain areas of their gardens, recognizing its value as a no-effort food source. The seeds were also collected and ground into flour, providing a nutritious addition to breads and porridges. Rich in protein and minerals, this flour helped stretch scarce wheat flour during times when every ingredient needed to go as far as possible. Field peas, the tough southern survivor. In the unrelenting heat and drought of the Depression years, field peas proved themselves as true survivors of the South. These hardy legumes thrived when other plants withered, their deep roots reaching down to find moisture, even in the driest soil. Like nature's own drought insurance, field peas would keep producing food even when rain was scarce. Families valued them for their incredible versatility. Young pods could be eaten fresh like snap beans. Tender peas could be shelled for immediate use, or the peas could be left to dry right on the vine for winter storage. But field peas did more than just feed families. They actually improved the soil they grew in, enriching it with nitrogen that would help next year's crops grow better. This dual-purpose role made them invaluable in Depression-era gardens where every plant needed to earn its keep. Their high protein content meant they could serve as a meat substitute, helping families stay healthy even when they couldn't afford other protein sources. Varieties like black-eyed peas, crowder peas, and lady peas became staples in southern gardens, each bringing slightly different flavors and growing characteristics. Field peas paired perfectly with cornbread, creating a complete protein meal that could sustain hard-working families through long days of physical labor. The classic dish of peas and cornbread became a symbol of Southern resilience during the Depression. Simple, nourishing food that could be produced at home with minimal cost. The dry peas stored perfectly through winter with no special equipment needed, ensuring that families had access to protein year-round. This reliability made field peas among the most important survival crops during the Depression, particularly in the South, where their heat tolerance gave them a crucial advantage over other protein sources. Storage onions, the long-lasting keeper. While field corn provided the calories, storage onions brought both flavor and incredible keeping power to Depression-era pantries. These weren't the sweet onions we find in grocery stores today. These were tough, long-keeping varieties like Yellow Globe and Australian Brown that could last an amazing 8 to 10 months when properly stored. Depression-era families prized these onions not just for their flavor, but for their natural ability to fight disease and preserve other foods. When stored alongside other vegetables, the natural compounds in storage onions helped prevent spoilage, extending the life of an entire root cellar. These hardy onions were remarkably easy to grow, thriving in almost any soil and requiring very little care. Families would plant them in spring, harvest in late summer, and braid the strong tops together to hang in cool, dry places. A good crop of storage onions meant having both seasoning and vegetable throughout the winter months, adding vital nutrients and flavor to winter meals. Their powerful antibacterial properties also made them valuable folk medicine, with onion poultices and syrups used to fight winter colds and infections. During the Depression, when meat was often scarce, storage onions became essential for making simple foods palatable. A single onion could transform a pot of beans or a bowl of plain rice into a satisfying meal. Families would use them sparingly, often cutting just a small portion at a time and storing the rest for later use. The ability to grow your own seasoning became particularly important during the Depression, when store-bought spices were luxury items beyond the reach of many families. Storage onions, along with homegrown garlic and herbs, allowed even the poorest households to create flavorful meals from very basic ingredients. Skirret, the sweet root, time forgot. While modern gardens focus on carrots for sweetness, Depression-era families knew about a far more remarkable root vegetable, skirret. This forgotten treasure produced clusters of white roots that tasted sweeter than carrots and packed more natural sugar than almost any other root vegetable. What made skirret truly valuable was its perennial nature. Once planted, it would come back year after year, producing more roots with each passing season. During the Depression, when sugar was often too expensive for many families to buy, skirret provided a natural sweetness that made plain meals more enjoyable. The plants were incredibly hardy, laughing at winter's worst weather, while storing their sweet roots safely underground. Families could harvest these roots all winter long, simply digging what they needed and leaving the rest in the ground, nature's own root cellar. Each plant would grow bigger and produce more roots every year, creating an expanding source of food that required almost no work to maintain. Skirret had been a popular European vegetable since Roman times, but gradually disappeared from American gardens after the Depression as people turned to more modern varieties. Its revival today among heritage gardeners speaks to its remarkable qualities: sweet flavor, perennial growth habit, and resistance to both drought and frost. For Depression-era children, finding sweet skirret roots in the winter garden was like discovering buried treasure. The natural sugar content made them popular raw snacks at a time when store-bought sweets were unattainable luxuries for most families. Cooked skirret added sweetness to winter soups and stews, bringing a touch of brightness to otherwise plain meals. Cardoon, the forgotten winter delicacy. Just when the garden seemed most bare, Cardoon, also known as Cardoon, provided an unexpected winter treat. These remarkable plants, close cousins to the artichoke, brought something special to Depression-era gardens: fresh vegetables in the middle of winter. Looking like giant silvery celery stalks, cardoons were prized for their unique ability to produce edible stems even in cold weather. Unlike most garden vegetables that died back in winter, cardoons were perennial in many areas, coming back year after year without replanting. The plants grew impressively tall, creating striking silvery green towers in the garden that could withstand frost, continue producing food well into winter. Depression-era families would blanch the stalks by wrapping them in paper or cloth, resulting in tender, artichoke-flavored stems that could be baked, braised, or added to soups. This cold, hardy nature meant fresh vegetables when most gardens were dormant under snow. The unique flavor of cardoon, reminiscent of artichokes, but with a distinctive character all its own, brought welcome variety to winter meals dominated by stored root vegetables. While cardoon required slightly more preparation than some vegetables, Depression-era families found the effort worthwhile. The blanched stalks needed to be parboiled to remove some of their natural bitterness before final cooking, but the resulting flavor was considered well worth the extra work. Today, cardoon remains a specialty vegetable in certain European cuisines, particularly Italian and Spanish cooking, but is rarely seen in American gardens. For those who remember Depression-era gardens, however, the distinctive silvery plants represent a lost tradition of winter gardening that provided fresh food during the leanest months of the year. Sea kale, the coastal survivor. Our final vegetable brings us to the coastlines, where Depression-era families discovered the remarkable sea kale. This perennial vegetable had mastered the art of growing in salty, sandy soils where few other food plants could survive. Like a gift from the sea, it provided two distinct harvests: tender, blanched shoots in early spring that tasted like asparagus, and thick, blue-green leaves throughout the summer that could be cooked like cabbage. Once planted, sea kale would return year after year, growing stronger and more productive with each passing season. The plants developed deep roots that could find moisture even in sandy soil, making them virtually drought-proof. Depression-era families living near the coast would establish patches of sea kale that would feed generations, with some plants producing food for over 20 years. Its salt tolerance meant it could grow in areas where other vegetables failed, turning otherwise useless ground into productive garden space. This ability to thrive in poor conditions made it especially valuable during the Depression, when families needed to utilize every possible growing space to produce food. The early spring shoots were particularly prized, as they appeared weeks before most other vegetables were available. Families would cover the emerging shoots with pots or buckets to blanch them, resulting in tender, white stems that provided a welcome change from winter storage vegetables. Though sea kale largely disappeared from American gardens after the Depression, its remarkable resilience and perennial nature make it worth reconsidering today. For coastal gardeners facing sandy soil and salt spray, this forgotten vegetable offers solutions to problems that still challenge modern growers. These 25 vegetables aren't just plants from the past. They're survival tools that helped families through America's toughest times. What made them valuable wasn't fancy packaging or perfect appearance, but reliability when it mattered most. They were grown by families fighting to survive the worst economic disaster in our history. These forgotten vegetables offered unique benefits: incredible storage life, drought resistance, high nutrition, and the ability to grow with minimal care. Many still exist today, preserved by dedicated seed savers who understand their timeless value. The wisdom of our grandparents, expressed through their garden choices, offers lessons beyond gardening. Their resourcefulness created a remarkable legacy of American resilience. Families who faced incredible hardship but thrived through their connection to the soil. If you enjoyed this journey through Depression-era wisdom, please hit that like button and subscribe for more forgotten knowledge from the past. What vegetable from this list would you most like to try growing? Share your thoughts below. Until next time, when we'll uncover more survival lessons from our ancestors. Helps us continue researching and sharing these valuable skills that our ancestors relied on. What forgotten vegetable from this list would you most like to try growing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, when we'll uncover more survival lessons from our ancestors that might just help us face our own uncertain future.